Hello everyone and welcome back to Mediak. I have loved superheroes since I was born. Literally, I can't remember a time in my life in which I didn't obsess over them. One of my earliest formative memories is watching the trailer for Iron Man while at the drive-in. We went to go see the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, and I remember asking my mom what Iron Man was, and that's where it all started. From there, it was all over for me. I read comics and watched every single movie, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones. And I loved all of them. Funnily enough, it just became worth it too, with Deadpool and Wolverine being essentially the end game of the 20th Century Fox movies, but I guess I'll save that whole spiel for another video. It was necessary to bring up, however, because there was another amazing Marvel project that came out recently, one that I skipped and only decided to visit after watching Deadpool and Wolverine. You know how long I've been waiting for this? Just about 6 months, so not all that long. I'm going to be talking about X-Men 97. So here's how the video is going to play out. I'll separate it into two parts. First up, I'm going to talk about the show and talk about my favorite and least favorite parts about it. Then I'm going to talk about some other shows and see how it compares and just talk about adult animation overall. You might not get it, but stick around, you'll see what I mean. All right, let's jump right into this. I loved this show. So far, Marvel Animations has been killing it. I really enjoyed all 3 seasons of What If. Well, except for the weird duck thing from season 3. But this show is simply one of the best things Marvel has made since Infinity War. I haven't really read a whole lot of X-Men comics, and I haven't seen the original X-Men TV show from the 90s. These being the biggest reasons why I didn't watch the show earlier. While I was on vacation in May, link in description, I watched a handful of the very first season's episodes on the plane ride, and I loved them. They were shockingly good. But for some reason, I just straight up didn't keep watching it. No idea why, I have a weird brain. One day, while I was watching One Piece with my mom, we decided we didn't want to keep watching it. She was on Fishman Island, and honestly, we both just needed a break. When looking for something to watch, we stumbled upon X-Men 97, and I just said fuck it, so we watched the first episode. I was a little worried because the only knowledge my mom has is of the X-Men movies. And I have some extra info from certain Avengers-related comics and from YouTube, but still, there was a very good chance that both of us, or at the very least my mom, would be confused and not enjoy the show. To my surprise, my mom loved it and wants more of it, and same with myself, obviously. The animation was breathtaking and all the X-Men actually felt real. The most impressive part of the entire show to me was how adult it felt. A lot of animated shows tend to turn down the tone of the show because someone on the project wants it to be targeted towards kids, but that clearly wasn't the case for 97. Specifically the episode with Cable, I don't really want to spoil it, so if you know, you know. It was an insanely good episode, one that I felt rivaled the final episode of season 1 of Invincible. Not as gruesome as that episode, but as shocking in my opinion. Now, I'm actually going to talk about Invincible a little bit later, but I'll explain a little bit why now. At some point during the second episode, my mom mentioned that she thinks 97 has better animation than Invincible. No one get angry at my mom, please. She is a very kind soul, but you can get mad at me because I agree. And before you get mad, just stay tuned. I'll explain more in the next part, but I want to finish reviewing the show first. Back at it then. The story the show covers is very adult, like I said earlier, and I really enjoyed how much everything connects. There really wasn't any wasted time, and everything came back to mean something, and it flowed in a way that wasn't confusing, which I guess is just a wordy way of saying that the story was tight. I'm sure it comes from a comic in some fashion, but it's still impressive the way that they were able to adapt it all into a functioning story on the silver screen. They're going crazy up there. There were some crazy plot points that I felt were weird at the beginning, but were necessary for the overall story of the season, I guess. Most of the characters are better in the show than their film counterparts, as hard as that might be to believe. Nightcrawler was super fun, and I loved how he actually had his swords. Another standout was Rogue. I loved her rampage after the big bad day, and I would be wrong not to mention the man himself, Cyclops. Everyone has been talking about how he's been officially redeemed, and I full-heartedly agree. I wouldn't have spent hours animating him if I didn't. Thank you, Cassie. You made the animation look amazing. Everyone check out her Insta. So the animation was beautiful, the story was tight, and the characters were amazing. So the animation was beautiful, the story was tight, and the characters were amazing. Was there anything I didn't like about it? Well, thank you for asking. There's actually a handful of things. First up, Goblin Queen? I get that it's comic stuff and the clone thing is necessary for the plot, but bro, come on. That's the worst name in the history of names. She's a clone psychic. How is she a goblin? You don't get how out of the show I was taken when she said that name. It's not exactly a real complaint. I just felt like I needed to say it. My actual complaint of the show is the cameos. Small spoiler for like the next 30 seconds. Don't get me wrong, it's really cool. I like seeing the superheroes from all of Marvel history in their 90s comic forms, but it just felt weird to me. Like, if Doctor Strange exists, then why didn't he help with the world-ending event? Cap was held down by America, and I guess you could say Iron Man was affected by Magneto, but Strange could have fought. This isn't a show-ruining problem, obviously, but it's definitely something I wanted to talk about. I love the show Superman and Lois. Big switch up, I know, but everything will connect. One great thing about the world of that show is that Superman is the only hero. There's no Flash or Wonder Woman that needs to be explained away whenever a world-ending event happens. I thought, and hoped, 97 would be the same. Then we saw Sorcerer Magic from Forge. I instantly had a feeling we were going to get some cameos. Again, it was cool, but the more heroes inhabit a world, the more explanations you have to give to exclude them from the story. Sometimes it's better to just not show them at all. And for the final thing I didn't like, it was a little weird having Charles randomly appear alive on some alien planet. Just a little bit more of explanation of how he got there would have been appreciated. Nothing big. But I also acknowledge that I haven't seen the other 4 seasons, so maybe everything makes more sense than I thought. It just went from he's 100% dead to one episode just starting up with him alive and on a different planet. But overall, it's a great show with a handful of small issues in my books. I truly would recommend it to anyone. 8.5 out of 10. Alright, this is the section of the video where pitchforks are allowed, but only if your partner is holding a big stick with an unnecessarily large fire on it. Okay, I think I need to clarify the title card just a little bit. I specifically mean American animation. I'm a huge fan of anime and will be using some anime as examples. Like, soon I'll be talking about my opinions on Attack on Titan. Bull. And I'm also only talking about the animation of the show, not the story at all. We're gonna start in a weird place. Ever since I was a kid, I was pretty snobby whenever it came to animation. I honestly kind of am. I would never recommend the One Piece anime to someone because of the shitty animation and the shittier pacing, even though I think it's the greatest piece of storytelling in the history of mankind. Moving away from peak, CG was always my limit whenever it came to watching a show. I watched old school Dragon Ball and Z, but if I was watching a show and they had the gross CG stuff, you lost me. And that's honestly kind of still where my opinion is. I don't fully stop watching a show because of it anymore, but I definitely do take some points off if it looks gross. Case in point, Attack on Titan Season 4 Part 1. I don't know how people feel about the animation drop-off, but I absolutely hated it. Seasons 1 through 3 are beautiful. I can't even possibly express my disappointment whenever I started Season 4. It made me finish the series through the manga. It definitely picks up, but that initial disappointment rests in my brain like a core memory. Hey, it was Zach from the editing bay here. I just wanted to come back in and say that my opinions about the Attack on Titan animation drop-off were from back whenever I initially watched it. Upon rewatch, whenever I am doing the edit, it actually looks pretty darn good. I think it was genuinely just the initial disappointment from some of the most beautiful animated moments I've ever seen into not that, but it still was pretty good looking for the most part for CG. Why are you even bringing this up? Be patient, it's my video. CG is a tool. Like how there have been thousands of other tools to help improve 2D animation. When the tool is used in a rushed way or just straight up used poorly, it's noticeable. But that doesn't mean the tool is bad overall. For example, Trigun Stampede is a fully CG animated show. Some people don't like the new style, but it's wrong to think that the show isn't beautiful and fluid. Marvel Animations uses CG in all of their shows, first of which is the previously mentioned What If. Now, I'm not going to give any credit to the overall Marvel Productions or Disney for any of the animations. They probably enforced CG because it was cheaper and quicker, but that doesn't take away from the work that Flying Bark Productions put into it. They have a pretty large filmography, and admittedly I haven't seen basically any of their work, but I've seen their TMNT show and movie, and I honestly believe it's one of the best adaptations of the Turtles. Nick might also agree because they're lined up to make one of the Avatar movies. Anyway, back to What If Season 1. It was the most basic out of all the Marvel animation seasons, but there's still a ton of really impressive work in it. It's insanely fluid and very fast. I remember watching the Agent Carter episode for the first time and being blown away. It was one of those things that started to break down my negative reception of CG animation. The second season was a bit more of the same, but with a lot more going on in the background, which is pretty impressive. The massive step up in animation quality was with 97. Flying Bark Productions didn't animate it, Studio Mir took over the production of the show. Funnily enough, they also worked in the Avatar series. The studio animated Legend of Korra, which is also something I want to make a video on eventually. And the founder of Mir also worked on the original Avatar show, so lots of Nick connections. Similar to What If, they animated the show in 3D. However, they also needed to replicate the feel of the original show. So they did both 3D and 2D animation. It's initially made in 3D, and then it's redrawn in 2D. Hi, Zach from the editing bay. I just want to say that I was ignorant here, and I meant that they did the layouts in CG. The entire show itself, from the storyboards to all of the in-betweens, are actually 2D, with some CG thrown in for certain background elements, the different like water and like coffee. But for the most part, it actually is just 2D animated. I misinterpreted them saying that they did the layouts in CG as them animating the entire show in CG and then animating in 2D over top of it. That's not true. They just did the layouts. They did not animate the show in CG and then go over top. And then they slap a VHS effect over top. All of this together makes for one of the most beautifully animated series I've ever seen. A perfect mix of CG and traditional animation, with some gorgeous impact frames thrown in for fun. The craziest thing is that this is just the first season. There were some issues behind the scenes with the production of the show, so I don't know exactly how long it's going to be before season 2. Sorry to interrupt, this is going to be a side note. While I was researching this video, I saw that a lot of people were complaining about how long it takes to make shows. People were upset the show might not come out until 2026. I've also seen people get upset about the Batman 2, as if they didn't just get something for that universe. Some idiots think you can just spawn something good into reality. Take a look at 7 Deadly Sins. That show had an insane drop-off because people just wanted it out quicker. Now I have a question. Would you rather a fast shit show or a cohesive and consistent show? I mean, take a look at Invincible. Yeah, Season 1's animation wasn't perfect, but after over 2 years, the animation improved stayed the same. We waited over 2 years, and then a 6-month gap, and the animation didn't improve at all. Womp womp. I don't mean to disrespect Wind Sun Sky Entertainment, Robert Kirkman, or anyone who put their heart and soul into animating, voice acting, or adapting the story. I did enjoy Season 2. Feel free to check out my video on it if you're interested in those opinions. However, I was pretty disappointed with the animation. That was basically my only gripe with Season 1 whenever I first watched it. I felt the action scenes were good, but sometimes the characters just look like PNGs being moved in Premiere. And Invincible does use CG, but in the wrong way. It is used simply just to make things done quick and cheap. But that doesn't mean it also has to look bad. But like I said earlier, this would be forgiven if Season 2 improved. And they added impact frames during the fights, but there just weren't really any other improvements. And I did love and appreciate the animation joke where they talked about how hard and long it is, but making a joke about the issue doesn't fix it. I don't care that it was taking a while. I care that it was taking a while and it doesn't look like its competitors. Competitors that need the same amount of time and resources, but look 10 times better. And it's so noticeable that my mom noticed it. Invincible is too good of a show to let What If, X-Men, and now even Creature Commandos outstage the animation department. I'm about to sound really mean, but I'm sorry, I'm just being honest. Kirkman, Robbie. Can I call you Robbie? Alright, Robbie. Let's take a look at the studios that animate the shows that I've mentioned. What If? Animated a new TMNT and a ton of other movies and shows. X-Men 97. Animated Legend of Korra and a ton of other movies and shows. Creature Commandos. Didn't work on a whole lot, but has a few shows under their belt, like Captain Laserhawk, which is dope. Now let's look at your company. My Singing Monsters, Fandemonium, Summoners War, Roblox, Camp Bonkers, Future Chicken. The only other thing that Wind Sun Sky has apart from Invincible is a series called Cyclops, and I wasn't blown away by the trailer. And I don't mean to sound rude, but Invincible is one of the biggest IPs in the world right now. The show and the fans deserve a better animation quality than phone games. The sad thing about all of this and everything I've said is that Invincible is good animation compared to the rest of American adult animation. I sometimes forget about the other shit shows sitting at the bottom of the barrel. We've made a decent amount of good adult shows, but I feel like for every X-Men 97, there's 20 Paradise PDs. Ever since I was a kid, I loved animated series that treated the audience like adults. I've mentioned it a lot, but Avatar is one of the first TV shows I actually remember watching, which is pretty crazy to say. I feel so lucky that I started with such an amazing show. Avatar set the bar insanely high, which is crazy because it's a kid's show. It's just such a shame that the barrier for entry is so low for adult shows. But hey, good shows require effort and intelligent writing. Adults don't want that stuff. Now it's time to go watch the next episode of season 23 of Family Guy. My favorite. I hope everyone enjoyed watching. After writing this, I realized I basically only talked about superhero shows for adults. If you have any other adult animated projects that aren't superhero related, feel free to comment below and maybe I'll make a video on it. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed. See ya. Please subscribe.